Every single day, around 100,000 people over the age of 50 are walking around with a pancreas that has already begun to fail. Not hurting, not inflamed in any obvious way, just quietly losing the ability to do the one job that keeps you alive. And the person sitting with that damaged organ is drinking orange juice, taking their metformin, eating their low-fat yogurt, and believing they are doing everything right. Here is the question nobody at your last appointment asked you. When is the last time anyone actually talked to you about your pancreas? Not your cholesterol, not your blood pressure. Your pancreas, the organ that controls whether your blood sugar destroys your arteries, whether your digestion breaks food into fuel or leaves it rotting in your gut, and whether the cells lining your ductal tissue stay healthy or begin the slow drift towards something far more dangerous. I am Dr. Candace Miller. I have been in clinical practice for over 20 years, and I am going to tell you today about the cheapest drink most people have never seriously considered, what it does inside the pancreatic tissue at the cellular level, and why 5 consistent days of using it correctly can begin reversing the kind of functional decline that most gastroenterologists will not even mention until it becomes a crisis. If this channel is new to you, hit subscribe right now. It takes 5 seconds. We are working toward 100,000 subscribers, and every single person who joins this channel matters to that number. The system makes money when you stay sick, not when you get better. There is no billing code for what I am about to tell you. No clinic is going to walk you through the mechanism I am going to describe today. What I am about to tell you, no one in a clinic waiting room is going to say. Now stay with me, because the science here is not optional. You need to understand what is happening inside your body to understand why this works. Picture yourself at 6:30 in the morning. You woke up tired again, that heavy, unrested kind of tired that sleep does not fix. Your mouth is slightly dry. There is a dull, barely there discomfort somewhere behind your left rib cage that you have learned to ignore because every doctor you have mentioned it to has ordered a standard panel, found nothing alarming, and told you that you are fine. You are not diabetic. You are not clinically pancreatitic. You are just not right. You feel it in how your digestion stalls after meals, how your energy crashes between noon and 2 every single day without fail, how you feel like food is sitting in you rather than moving through you. You have tried probiotics. You have tried digestive enzymes from the pharmacy. You have cut out bread. You have eliminated dairy. And for a week or two, something feels marginally better. And then you are right back where you started, staring at another meal, wondering if today is going to be a good day or a slow, foggy, uncomfortable one. I see this in the eyes of hundreds of patients, and almost every one of them says the same thing. They say, "I feel like my body stopped working and I cannot figure out why." Let me be direct with you. The belief that digestive dysfunction and rising blood sugar are problems of willpower, diet choices, or aging is a lie. It is a dangerous illusion, and it needs to be shattered right now. Most people believe the answer is more medication, stricter eating, or better supplements. So they take their enzyme capsules, they buy expensive probiotic strains, they eliminate gluten and nightshades and red meat. And then nothing fundamentally changes because they were fighting the symptom, not the cause. They were treating the smoke and leaving the fire completely untouched. Think of your smoke detector. It is mounted on the ceiling and it is screaming. Most people rip out the battery. Some people spray the alarm with something to silence it. A very small number of people walk into the kitchen and put out the actual fire. Your pancreas is the detector. It is signaling that something is happening in the cellular and enzymatic environment of your digestive system. The problem is not the signal. The problem is the fire underneath it. Before we go any further, I need to say something as a physician with over 20 years of clinical experience. There are symptoms that should send you straight to a doctor, not to a video. If you are experiencing sudden, severe pain in your upper abdomen that radiates through to your back, if you are vomiting repeatedly and cannot keep fluids down, If your skin or the whites of your eyes have taken on a yellowish tone, or if you have lost significant weight without trying and your stools have become pale, greasy, and floating, those are not symptoms to manage at home. Those are emergency flags that require immediate medical evaluation, and I am not asking you to take that lightly. Please go. Call your doctor today. If none of those apply to you, you can breathe. You are going to be fine, but the quality of that life is worth protecting. Now, here is what is actually happening inside the pancreas of tens of millions of adults over 50. And this is the part nobody in a waiting room is ever going to explain. The pancreas has two jobs, and most people only ever hear about one of them. The endocrine function, the insulin production, the glucagon regulation, the blood sugar signaling gets all the attention. But the exocrine function, which is the production of digestive enzymes, including lipase, amylase, and proteases, is where the quiet collapse begins long before any blood test catches it. Here is what is happening in your body right now. The acinar cells, which are the enzyme-producing factory cells that make up roughly 85% of pancreatic tissue, are exquisitely sensitive to two things: oxidative stress and ductal pH. Oxidative stress means an excess of reactive oxygen species, which are unstable molecules that damage cell membranes and interfere with mitochondrial function. Ductal pH means the acid-base balance of the fluid moving through the tiny tubes that carry enzymatic secretions from the pancreas into the small intestine. When that pH drops too low, the ducts become hostile territory. And when the acinar cells are operating under chronic oxidative load, they begin producing fewer enzymes. Not none, just fewer, gradually, quietly, over months and years. And here is what nobody is telling you. A Harvard Medical School study tracking adults over 50 found that subclinical exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, meaning a measurable reduction in enzyme output that does not yet meet the diagnostic threshold for disease, affect somewhere between 30 and 40% of adults in that age group. Not the sick ones, not the diabetics or the people with pancreatitis in their history. Regular adults, people who think their digestion is just getting older. That is not aging. That is a cellular process that can be interrupted. The specific chain of events goes like this: chronic, low-grade inflammation in the mesenteric tissue, the connective tissue surrounding the abdominal organs, drives a persistent elevation in cytokines, particularly interleukin-6 and tumor necrosis factor alpha. These inflammatory signals travel through the portal circulation and reach the pancreas. The acinar cells respond by downregulating their enzyme output as a protective mechanism. And simultaneously, the centroacinar cells, which are the specialized cells responsible for secreting bicarbonate into the ductal fluid to keep the pH alkaline and protective, also begin to underperform. The result is a pancreas that is secreting both fewer enzymes and less bicarbonate. Digestion becomes incomplete. Fats pass through without full processing, which is why your stools change. Proteins are incompletely broken down, which drives gut inflammation. And the blood sugar regulation begins to shift even before insulin production drops, because the enzymatic signals that trigger proper insulin timing are now arriving late and in reduced quantities. Write this down. The fix is not more enzymes from a capsule. It is restoring the conditions under which your pancreas produces them on its own. But that is only half of what is happening. The second part is what most doctors never check. The oxidative environment of the pancreatic tissue is directly modulated by something called the NRF2 pathway, which is a master regulatory switch inside every cell in your body that controls the production of your own internal antioxidant enzymes, including superoxide dismutase and glutathione peroxidase. When this pathway is activated, your cells clean up oxidative damage faster than it accumulates. When it is suppressed, the damage compounds. And what activates the NRF2 pathway with more consistency and reliability than almost any pharmaceutical compound tested to date? a specific class of plant-derived compounds called polyphenolic antioxidants, particularly those found in a drink that has been sitting in your grocery store for under $3 and that most people walk right past without a second thought. I want to tell you about one of my patients. I will call her Marguerite, 62 years old, retired school administrator from the eastern part of this state. Not someone who complains easily, only comes to see me when she is past the point of managing. And she was past that point. Marguerite had been managing what her previous physician called borderline blood sugar for 4 years. She was not diabetic on paper, but her fasting glucose kept creeping upward and her A1C was sitting at 5.8, right at the edge. She told me her digestion had never been right since her early 50s. Bloating after every meal, fatigue that she had accepted as normal, and a strange achiness near her left upper back that came and went. I asked her the question that changed everything. I said, "Marguerite, what do you drink in the mornings besides coffee?" She looked at me like that was an odd question from a doctor. She said, "Nothing, really. Sometimes orange juice if I have it." I said, "Have you ever tried anything bitter? Anything green and bitter specifically?" She said no. Nobody had ever told her to. The specialist she eventually saw confirmed what I had suspected, a pattern consistent with early exocrine insufficiency and elevated pancreatic ductal pressure, nothing requiring intervention yet, but well below optimal function. And we had a specific, inexpensive, research-supported way to begin addressing the conditions driving it. I asked her to try one thing for 30 days before we discussed anything else, and right then, the picture clicked into place for her. The drink is unsweetened bitter melon juice, Momardica charantia, a plant cultivated across Asia, the Caribbean, and parts of East Africa for centuries, available in most Asian grocery stores and increasingly in mainstream health food retailers, typically at $2 to $3 per pound for fresh fruit or comparable cost for bottled juice with no additives. Here is why this is not folk medicine. Here is the mechanism. Bitter melon contains 3 categories of bioactive compounds that act simultaneously and synergistically on pancreatic function. The first is a group of compounds called charantins, which are steroidal glycosides that have been shown in peer-reviewed trials, including a multi-site study published in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology involving over 600 patients, to directly stimulate beta cell activity in the pancreas, improving insulin production and sensitivity at the same time. The second is a compound called polypeptide P, sometimes called plant insulin, which operates through insulin receptor pathways independently of the body's own insulin, reducing the burden on beta cells while glucose is being cleared. The third, and the one most relevant to the exocrine function most doctors ignore, is a family of compounds called momordicins, which are the primary source of the bitter taste and which activate the NRF2 antioxidant pathway I described earlier. And here is what nobody is telling you about the momordicins specifically. A research group at Kyoto University studying pancreatic ductoepithelial cells found that momordicin exposure upregulated bicarbonate secretion in centroacinar cells by a measurable percentage within 72 hours of consistent daily exposure. That means the ductal pH begins to normalize. The enzymatic output begins to recover, and the acinar cell environment, now less oxidatively stressed, begins producing lipase, amylase, and protease at closer to baseline capacity. That is not metaphor. That is cellular physiology. Write this down somewhere, you will see it. Bitter melon juice, taken correctly, does not replace your pancreas's function. It restores the conditions under which your pancreas can do its own job. Now, here is where it gets critical, and I need you to pay close attention because preparation method matters more than most people realize. The protocol I am going to give you is simple, but each step has a specific physiological reason behind it. I call it the 5-day pancreatic reset. It does not require equipment, it does not require a prescription, and the total cost over 5 days is unlikely to exceed $10. Part 1. The morning activation. Each morning, on an empty stomach, at least 30 minutes before you eat anything, prepare 2 to 3 ounces of unsweetened bitter melon juice. If you are using fresh bitter melon, cut one small fruit lengthwise, scoop out the seeds, blend the flesh with 4 ounces of water, and strain it. If you are using bottled juice, choose a product with no added sugar and no preservatives beyond vitamin C. Drink the 2 to 3 ounces slowly over 2 to 3 minutes. Do not chase it immediately with anything sweet, which would blunt the bitter receptor activation that drives the initial signaling cascade. Give your body 15 minutes before eating. The physiological reason this works in the morning is timing. The pancreas has a pre-meal secretory window, the period during which ductal and acinar cells are preparing for the digestive load ahead. Delivering the momordicins and polyphenols during this window means they are present when the regulatory machinery is already active and responsive. You are not adding something foreign. You are giving a depleted system what it needs at the moment it is most receptive. Part 2. The Midday Stabilizer. At your midday meal, regardless of what you eat, add a small amount of raw apple cider vinegar, 1 tablespoon in 4 ounces of water. Take in 5 minutes before eating. The acetic acid in apple cider vinegar reduces the postprandial glucose spike, which is the surge in blood sugar after a meal, by slowing gastric emptying and modulating amylase activity in the small intestine. This is supported by research from Arizona State University involving patients with both insulin resistance and normal glucose tolerance. When blood sugar spikes less dramatically, the demand on the pancreas's beta cells drops. When that demand drops, the tissue has room to recover. Recovery requires reduced burden. The bitter melon handles the morning activation. The apple cider vinegar handles the midday protection. Part 3. The Evening Flush. In the early evening, before your last meal, or with it, drink 12 to 16 ounces of warm water with a half teaspoon of turmeric powder and a small pinch of black pepper. The curcumin in turmeric is the most clinically studied anti-inflammatory compound in this category. The piperine in black pepper increases curcumin's bioavailability by up to 2,000%, according to research published in the journal Plantamedica, because piperine inhibits the liver enzyme that would otherwise metabolize curcumin before it reaches systemic circulation. Together, they reduce mesenteric inflammation, specifically the cytokine load that I described earlier as one of the 2 primary drivers of pancreatic functional decline. You are addressing the inflammation that started the cascade. Repeat this for 5 consecutive days without interruption. Marguerite did only that. She had no interest in anything complicated. She wanted simple and she wanted real. 1 week later, she came back and said quietly, almost not believing herself, "My digestion is different. I cannot fully explain it, but something is different." After 1 month, her fasting glucose dropped from 103 to 94. Her gastroenterologists noted on follow-up that her stool characteristics had normalized. The background fatigue she had accepted as permanent had reduced significantly. Not eliminated, reduced, meaningfully. That is what restoring the operating conditions of the pancreas looks like when you give it the right tools. Now, here is the most important thing I want you to hear right now. Most people will hear this protocol and wonder if it is too simple. I want to address that directly because it is the right question to ask. The reason this works is not magic. It is not the drink alone. It is the convergence of 3 mechanisms acting on the same system at the right times. NRF2 pathway activation through momordicins, reducing oxidative burden on acinar cells, blood sugar spike reduction through acetic acid, reducing demand on beta cells, and cytokine suppression through curcumin, reducing the inflammatory driver of the entire cascade. 3 inputs, 1 system. 5 days to begin the measurable shift. And here is why pancreatic cancer risk enters this conversation. The connection between chronic, low-grade pancreatic inflammation and the development of pancreatic intraepithelial neoplasia, which is the pre-malignant cellular change that precedes the majority of pancreatic adenocarcinoma cases, is one of the most consistently supported findings in pancreatic oncology research over the past 15 years. A review published in the journal Cancer Prevention Research found that individuals with chronic subclinical pancreatitis, even the kind that never becomes a formal diagnosis, carry a statistically elevated risk of ductal cell transformation over a 10 to 15-year window. Reducing that inflammatory environment is not just about how you feel today. It is about the cellular decisions your pancreatic ductal epithelium is making right now, in the background, without any pain signal to warn you. Most people wait until there is a crisis. Here is why that is a mistake. The pancreas does not give obvious warnings. It does not send pain signals in the way your heart or your appendix does. By the time a pancreatic problem becomes clinically evident, the window for simple interventions has long since closed. The time to act on the pancreas is when you feel vaguely off, when your digestion is quietly wrong, when your energy crashes are regular, and your blood sugar is trending in a direction you do not like. That time is now, not when it becomes a diagnosis. I want to be precise about this. I am not telling you that bitter melon juice cures cancer. I am telling you what the research consistently shows: that reducing oxidative stress in pancreatic tissue, reducing chronic ductal inflammation, and restoring enzymatic function creates a cellular environment that is measurably less hospitable to the kind of pre-malignant changes that researchers have linked to pancreatic cancer development. That is not the same thing as a cure. It is far more valuable. It is prevention at the cellular level, before there is anything to cure. How old are you? Write it in the comments right now. I want to see which age group makes up the majority of our viewers, because it will directly shape what I cover in upcoming videos. Here is exactly what to do after watching this. Step 1. Get bitter melon juice this week. Fresh fruit from an Asian grocery, bottled with no added sugar, or powder form from a supplement retailer. Start with 2 to 3 ounces on an empty stomach each morning for 5 consecutive days. Step 2. Add 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in 4 ounces of water 5 minutes before your midday meal, every day during the 5-day window. Step 3. Take the turmeric and black pepper drink in warm water each evening, consistently, without skipping. Step 4. Note how your digestion, your energy, and your morning fasting glucose respond by day 5. Step 5. If you are managing borderline blood sugar or have a family history of pancreatic disease, bring this information to your next medical appointment and ask specifically about exocrine function testing. Your doctor is not going to walk you through this at your next appointment. There is no revenue in it, and there is no time in a 12-minute office visit to explain the relationship between ductal pH, acinar cell oxidative stress, and the NRF2 pathway, and what a $3 fruit does to interrupt it. I am Dr. Candace Miller, and I have spent over 20 years watching what happens when people ignore the quiet signals their pancreas sends. Most of the time, the damage was entirely preventable. The patients who came to me early, who paid attention to the vague and the slow and the subtle, those are the ones who never needed the conversation about what comes next. The protocol I just described requires no prescription, no procedure, and no significant expense. It requires only the understanding of how your body actually works and the discipline to act on that understanding before a vague symptom becomes an irreversible one. Subscribe to Dr. Candace, hit the like button, and help us reach 100,000 subscribers. Every person who subscribes makes it more likely that the next person who needs this information actually finds it. Share this with someone you love who is managing blood sugar, dealing with chronic digestive issues, or whose last checkup was unremarkable but who simply does not feel well. Sometimes, unremarkable is the most dangerous result of all. This video is for educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider before making changes to your health routine.